on here, we have to solve 4x plus y equals 6 for x. So we're going to get x by itself on the left-hand side of the equation. So I'm going to subtract y from both sides. So here we have 4x equals, and I'm going to put the letter before the number, so negative y plus 6. Math tradition says you put variables first and numbers second. Then I'm going to divide everything by 4. So here we would have x equals, if I have a negative, that's negative 1. So I'm going to write that as negative 1 over 4 times y plus, I'm going to reduce the fraction 6 over 4 to 3 over 2. Now in this formula, the Fahrenheit temperature is 9/5 times the Celsius temperature plus 32. So we're going to work backwards and solve that for C. So I'm going to kind of write our first step here of subtracting 32. So we have f minus 32 is equal to 9 over 5 times the temperature in degrees Celsius. Now to get rid of this 9 over 5, what I'm going to do is multiply by the reciprocal of 9/5, which is 5 over 9. So I'm going to, on this side, write 5 over 9 times f minus 32. So I use parentheses because I'm multiplying the whole thing by 5 over 9. And then here, that would be 5 over 9 times 9 over 5c. So then that all will cancel out. And we're left with c by itself. And I'm going to switch the two signs of the equation. So we're going to have c equals 5 over 9 times f minus 32. Now in this equation, we're going to take the perimeter formula and solve it for L. So I want L by itself, so I'm going to subtract 2w from both sides. Again, oops, and I wrote an L. So on this side, it's going to be p minus 2w. You can't combine those because those are not like terms. And then that equals 2L. And then from there, I'm going to divide everything by 2. So you would get p over 2 minus w equals L. And I'm going to switch that. So L is on the left, and then that equals p over 2 minus w. For this equation, a equals s squared. So we want s by itself. So what I'm going to do is switch the sides and say s squared equals a. Now to get rid of the squared, you take the square root. So s would equal. Now when I take the square root of a number, it's going to become positive or negative. So this is going to be plus or minus the square root of a. So for example, if I did the square root of 9, it's 3 or negative 3 because 3 times 3 is 9 and negative 3 times negative 3 is also 9. So in this equation, we're going to do the same idea but solve for z squared. So I'm going to get rid of both 9 and pi in one step by dividing both sides by 9 pi. Now I'm going to switch the sides of my equation and write z squared on the left, and then that's equal to r over 9 pi on the right. And then I'm going to take the square root. So z is going to equal the square root of r over 9 pi, and write that as plus or minus. And now we're just going to evaluate a function. So that just means substitute in a value. So we're going to substitute x is 15 and find the y value. So on here, that would just be 3 over 5 times, I'm going to use parentheses, so times 15 minus 5. Now I can do here, this would be 15 over 1, so I can divide and do 15 divided by 5. So that'd be 3 and 1. So this would really equal 3 times 3 over 1 times 1, or 9 minus 5, which is 4. Now, as always, you can use a calculator. So if you needed to use one, you can do 3 divided by 5 times 15, and then minus 5, and you got 4. Now, in this example, we have to find the value of x that makes the equation true. So we need to get x on one side of the variable, or one side of the equation. So what I'm going to do here is first get rid of the fractions. So I'm going to multiply both sides by 4. The reason that's going to get rid of that negative 1/4. So 4 times negative 1 over 4 is going to be negative 1x. And then we do 4 times 7 would be minus 28 equals here. And when I distribute from the backside, you go 3 times, or 3x times 4 would be 12x, plus 6 times 4 would be 24. Then from there, you would add 1x to both sides. And you would have negative 28 equals 13x, and then plus 24. Then you minus 24 from both sides. And when I add those, negative 28 minus 24 is negative 52. And that equals 13x. So then you divide both sides by 13. And you have negative 52 divided by 13. And that would be negative 4. So here, x equals negative 4. So here, to solve and graph an inequality, you go 2 times 4 would be 8, plus 2 times 2x would be 4x, is greater than or equal to 5x plus 5. Now I'm going to collect the x's on the left and move the numbers on the right. So I'm going to collect the x's first and subtract 5x from both sides. So here I bring the 8 down, and 4x minus 5x is going to be negative x. That's going to be greater than or equal to 5. Then I'm going to subtract 8 from both sides and have negative x is greater than or equal to 5 minus 8 is negative 3. Now I'm going to divide both sides by negative 1. And when I do that, I have to reverse the inequality. So I'm going to have x is less than or equal to 3. Now to graph that, I'm just going to make a number line. I'm going to put 0. You can put 1 and 2, but I'm just going to go to 3. Put a solid dot because it can be equal to that. And my arrow of the solutions would be to the left, any number less than or equal to 3. Now, for this inequality, we just have to solve for x. So to get x by itself, first I'm going to subtract 6 from both sides and get 1/3 x is less than. And then 4 minus 6 would be negative 2. And then from there, I'm going to multiply both sides by 3. And you would get x is less than negative 2 times 3 is negative 6. So now we're asked, is 0, 1 a solution to this inequality? Well, there's a few ways to do this. So one thing that I could do is graph the inequality. So here would be, I'd be at positive 3. And then that's my y-intercept of the inequality. And then my slope is negative 2. So from that point, I would go down 2 and then over 1. And then just keep doing that, down 2 over 1. Then I'm going to make a line. Now, the greater than means I shade above. So my solution region is going to be any point here. The point that we're asking, though, here's 0, 1, and it's not in the solution region. So this is going to be no. And then there's one method for showing our work. Another method is we could substitute for x and y and see is this true? Because I know that x equals 0 and y equals 1. So if I plug that in, is 1 greater than or equal to negative 2 times 0 plus 3? So is 1 greater than or equal to? This makes 0.
Some students, please pardon this interruption.
So that's going to make 0, and this would be 3. Is 1 greater than or equal to 3? That is false. So that's why this is not a solution. So now here, if the domain of x is restricted to x being between 0 and 3, what's the range? So what you would do is put in x equals 0 and x equals 3 and see what are the y values. So if I substitute that in, we have y equals negative 2 times 0. So that means y is going to have one value being 0. And then also y equals negative 2 times 3. So y is equal to negative 6. So that means our range, the low value here would be negative 6. The high value would be 0. So we can go y is between negative 6 and 0, and then put our inequality symbols. We can also put that in an interval notation and say this goes from negative 6 to 0. Again, I use brackets to just say that y could be at either negative 6 or 0.